Dracula. Count Dracula was one of the UN but Jonathan Harker didn't know that, and he agreed to help him to buy a house in London. And so, he was in Transylvania. He had 6 hours to wait before the coach came to take him to the Castle Dracula, so he went to a hotel. All the people there were frightened of Castle Dracula. They were silent when they heard Jonathan's work with Count. Jonathan was scared, but it was too late to go back. He went to the castle and met with Count. He was as cold as ice. Jonathan stayed there. He couldn't see Count during mornings. They could only meet at evenings. Jonathan gave the papers about the house to Count. His work in Transylvania was finished. But Count didn't let him go. Many doors in castle were locked. He understood that he was a prisoner. Every month, Count made Jonathan write a letter to London to tell that Jonathan was good and was going to stay for a while. Jonathan saw 3 women who's talking to Count about Jonathan's blood. In these days Count wanted Jonathan to write a letter to his girlfriend and wanted him to tell her that his work in Transylvania was finished and that he's coming home. Jonathan knew then that the Count planned to kill him. He wanted to escape and he started planning. While Jonathan was away, his girlfriend, Mina, was very unhappy and worried about his strange and short letters. Jonathan and Mina had 2 friends, Lucy and Arthur. They loved each other. Lucy sometimes liked to go and sit quietly in the churchyard. One night, Mina saw something dark behind Lucy. She was asleep in the moonlight. There were 2 little drops of blood on her neck. After that night Lucy was worse. Mina had a letter the day after. Jonathan escaped from the Castle Dracula and he fell ill in the mountains. But they were together again and everything was all right. They married after few months. In these days, they saw the Count in London. Jonathan was afraid. When they arrived home, there was a letter from Arthur. Lucy was dead. She lost blood every day after Mina saw her with the vampire. All of her friends were sad, but she wasn't dead. She was one of the UN dead. She went out of her coffin every night and killed poor little children. Arthur, his friend Jack, and Jack's old teacher Professor Van Helsing went to the 2 men. They drove a long piece of wood through Lucy's heart with a hammer. She was restful now. Mina and Jonathan agreed to help Professor to kill the vampire. They began to work. But in these days, the Count gave Mina the kiss of death. Now they had to kill the vampire before Mina was dead. They found Count's coffin leaving England back to Transylvania. On the way, Jonathan jumped onto the cart. He pushed the coffin, brought his knife down straight the vampire's heart. Count gave a horrible scream, and then lay quiet. Mina was okay and Dracula was dead at last. They began to live again.